Our presentation is going the distance for arc flash safety. And what I want to do is just kind of touch on arc flash, the types of solutions that we bring to the market, and essentially why we exist. And that is, simply put, we exist to isolate people from arc flash hazards. We do that by using distance as a tool to keep people outside of harm's way when it comes to arc flash. And we do that by making devices that can be used remotely, whether it's with a cable or through wireless means, to stand outside of the arc flash hazard boundary while you're operating the equipment. And by operating it, I mean switching tasks or racking, where you're pulling the apparatus on and off the electrical bus bars. And the photo here is a pretty good illustration, looking from the top down, of a person standing inside of a lineup of switchgear and operating the device. And should there be an incident, that person is outside of the arc flash hazard boundary. The photo here is of one of our remote racking devices. And again, you can see the worker standing, outside of the line of fire on the side of the switchgear, should something occur. So why distance? Distance is important because it decreases energy exponentially. So the further you move away from the source of an arc flash, the greater the energy decreases. So looking at this illustration, if you double the distance from the source of the arc flash or from the front of it, you cut the energy down to 1/4 of what it is at the front of the switchgear. So that's why we do it. And the further you can get away, the better when it comes to arc flash. So arc flash is a potential dangerous sudden release of energy. It's basically an explosion caused by an electrical fault. Typically, it's due to phase-to-phase or a phase-to-ground connection. And looking at the hierarchy of hazard controls, you'll see that we fall somewhere in the middle of this, where if you can eliminate the hazard, absolutely, that is the best thing you can do. Wearing PPE and standing in close proximity to a known hazard is the least effective method. So we like to illustrate that we fall right in the center of that as a solution set. If you can't eliminate it, what's better than being in close proximity is to engineer a way to decrease the risk to the human. Now, some people would look at this and maybe argue that using remote racking and switching is also inclusive of administrative controls, because you have to have the policies in place and the work practices in place and agreed to use remote racking and switching, and then you have to use it correctly. So I would say it is an administrative control and an engineering control when used correctly. So what usually causes electrical arcing? It's inadvertent contact, unfortunately. There can be loose connections, insulation failures, poorly maintained equipment, voltage transients, unsuccessful short circuit interruptions. And typical hazards of this include, super hot, superheated ionized gases up to 35,000 degrees. You've got molten debris, harmful light and noise, toxic gases and fumes. So you have breathing hazards, you have visual hazards, you have molten metal, you have copper rapidly expanding in the air, and there's a pressure wave depending on the type of enclosure that it's in. So an open air arc flash probably does not create a pressure wave, but an enclosed one would certainly create a pressure inside the enclosure that would have to go in some direction. A couple things that really affect that direction of an arc flash have been now considered in the updates to IEEE's 1584. And if you're familiar with 1584, that is the standard used to perform arc flash calculations. And in 2018, that was updated. Prior to 2018, these calculations were focused on a standard enclosure size. So it was 20 by 20 by 20, 20 inches by 20 inches by 20 inches. And with the changes, they're now taking into consideration the enclosure size and how that affects the arc flash and incident energy values. And so if you imagine a smaller enclosure with versus a larger enclosure, how might that change the arc flash values? And we say that because we have customers coming back to us since the 2018 changes saying that our arc flash values have changed. We now see greater incident energy on select breakers that we didn't beforehand know were that. And so we need new solutions or devices to get us outside the arc flash hazard boundary. A lot of our customers use that 40-calorie mark as the standard for when they use remote racking and switching. We typically see that on mains, as well as places like fire pump panels and locations in the system that are fed by the outside utility without much upstream overcurrent protection. So, again, looking at taking into consideration the enclosure sizes being included in the calculations, as well as the orientation of the electrical bus bars. So they can be vertically mounted, they can be horizontally mounted, and that orientation would influence or potentially change the direction of the incident energy. Oh, by the way, a really good resource for that is Jim Phillips and Brain Filler is just a really good resource to just type that and Google it in if you want to learn more about these changes to 1584. So ways to reduce arc flash incidents. There are several things you can do. One is to reduce your available fault current using high resistance grounding, current limiting devices. You may hear more about high resistance grounding in the presentation today. You can shorten clearing times with things like maintenance switches or zone selective relays. There are prevention efforts such as, well, maintaining your equipment. If your electrical switchgear isn't maintained or is out of date, if it's operating on let's say a trip slower than it should, then that arc flash label on your switchgear is probably pointless, because if we don't know or we think it's operating slower than it should to trip something, then that arc flash calculation can go up exponentially. So you have to maintain your equipment. You can monitor pressure junctions, do infrared scanning. You can redirect blast energy with things like arc resistant switchgear, and newer this past couple of years is arc sequencing switchgear. So there's a lot of solutions out there. But let's say you're in a facility that is maybe has older electrical infrastructure, and to do some of these upgrades would be a major task. There are things you can do now to reduce the risk to the people working there and your incident energy. So one task is what we're talking about today, or one solution is remote switching and racking, and that's to create a safe distance with your existing switchgear. And remote racking and switching is really ideal for commissioning new equipment when it's going into service for the first time, really wherever normal operating conditions aren't present, or we have high incident energy. If you need to select and isolate specific pieces of equipment in critical situations, maybe you need to shut down a fan out in the plant floor for maintenance, and there's a motor control center bucket feeding that. You could use remote switching to turn off that MCC. You could use remote racking to pull it out. You could perform the maintenance and then put it back in that critical environment where you don't, or maybe can't, shut down the entire lineup. So it kind of gives you some flexibility and new ability in what you can do. Looking at normal operating conditions, again, this is defined by NFPA 70E, and that means that your equipment is properly installed, properly maintained. New this year says rated for the available fault current, so your switchgear needs to be rated appropriately for the fault current. It needs to be used in accordance with instructions and also in accordance to the manufacturer's instructions. The equipment doors should be closed and secured. All equipment covers should be in place and secured, and there should be no evidence of impending failure. And that's always kind of been a vague statement unless you boil down what that means. And so I included there, that's talking about arcing, evidence of overheating, loose or bound parts, visible damage, or deterioration or water damage. If you have the normal operating conditions, I still believe you should utilize PPE, and that's my personal preference. But is remote racking and switching necessary when you have absolutely normal operating conditions that everything is perfect? Probably not. However, I could tell you there's a lot of facilities, there's a lot of customer sites we go to where we find water, we find things that haven't been maintained as they should have. And if you're ever uncertain about something, or if you can think about your plant and that piece of equipment that maybe gives you a little bit of nervous feeling, then maybe remote racking and switching is a good solution for that particular location. So things you hear us say when we talk about our equipment, we use a lot of acronyms. An RSO is a remote switch operator. RSA is remote switch actuator. And in the photo, that's the green star here, the device. And these push buttons, pull levers, do the racking and switching. An RRS is remote racking system. The big blue cart here, that's our universal system. That motor can go up and down for switchgear that's high up or low to the ground. That's for anything that uses a rotary style racking mechanism. And we have application specific solutions, which are designed just for one type of breaker. They're usually lighter weight, easy to get up and down a flight of stairs, and just designed for the specific breaker. All right, so looking at some of this stuff, we have RSKs, which we call our remote switch kits. Again, they're lightweight, highly portable. The one in the photo here is operating a pistol grip control switch. This is typically found over a medium voltage circuit breaker, probably a DS breaker as I'm looking at this photo. And so that's basically just tripping or closing the breaker. Real simple, easy to operate. They're based on magnets, and so there's no modification to the switchgear required. There's no brackets to put in. It's just a portable tool that you can attach magnetically, take it off, go to the next one as you need to. These are typically operated with a 30-foot or a 50-foot cable, or they can be wireless, which is a offering we've made in the last couple of years. We've also partnered with Milwaukee to use their M18 batteries on the equipment as well. So RSKs include all the components that you need, meaning that we have, there's a nice lightweight carrying case. It's inclusive of your controller, a control cable, and the actuator designed for the breaker. The wireless kit here, you see the M18 battery, you get the charger, you get the actuator, and a wireless controller that gives you up to 100 feet of distance. Everything's very intuitive, so we always try to encourage two hands on the controller, so you're not walking around with the actuator in one hand and the controller in the other, and maybe accidentally make it operate and have a really bad pinch hazard. So we design it to be simple to understand, easy to operate, with safety in mind. Everything has an alignment feature that we make as well with these remote switch kits. And so what we're looking at in the photo, this is a master packed NW breaker by Schneider Electric. And on our mounting bracket for the remote switching kit, this little black piece of Delrin, which is a type of plastic, fits right in underneath the racking handle on the breaker. And when that's in place, that means that you know that device is on there securely. The actuators are lining up with the buttons, and it just makes it really intuitive and easy to use for the people on the plant floor. And very fast too. Our breaker control switches, again, we've covered that earlier, but we have our CSO1 model covers about 80% of control switches out there. Again, here's the wireless version of that. You may have seen the name Chicken Switch. That was the company's name and the brand prior to CBS ArcSafe acquiring us in 2018. Again, now powered by Milwaukee's M18 batteries. You can see the magnetic face that goes right over the escutcheon plate. And we have 6 different models of this for a variety of switches. There's some common control switches that we see. You may identify with some of these. And then looking at motor control centers, again, if you need to flip a lever or push a button, we have a device for it. But on motor control centers, what we see here is an Allen Bradley 2100 MCC with Secure Connect. Here is a centerline medium voltage MCC. But we also have these available for Schneider and Square D models, Siemens, GE, really anything, any switchgear in North America that you need advice for, we have probably had it designed. In total, we have over 800 products for various solutions. Here's an example of how this is I believe a Magnum DS circuit breaker, and the device is going on magnetically with magnets, and then a linear actuator pushing the close button. And again, using alignment features, we always make sure that you really don't have to think too much about attaching these. We realize that you have a bigger job to do than figure out how something goes on the switchgear. So we don't want to take up a lot of time, and therefore we need to make it as intuitive as possible. Now, some breakers actually close when you're pulling the charging handle. And for those, we have solutions that include what we call charge, close, and trip. So when you're charging that handle, sometimes a breaker will close maybe on the fourth or fifth or sixth pull on the handle. And we have devices that will do that too. And some of our customers even say if they open the switchgear door up and they are operating or pulling a charging handle, even if you're not changing the status of the breaker, meaning you're not tripping it or closing it, they still consider that operating the breaker, and their policies mandate the use of something to charge the handle as well. So we have those solutions too. There are solutions out there, and I didn't think this was possible a while ago for molded case circuit breakers. If you're familiar with these breakers, you know that they can take everything you've got to push on the breaker to close or trip it. We do have solutions for that. Again, really quick, really simple to use. They attach with magnets. They use the frame of the switch for anti-torque so that the actuator doesn't go anywhere while it's pushing on the breaker handle, but there are solutions for that. We also get a lot of requests for bolted pressure switches and Pringle switches. So we do have an actuator that will actuate or push and pull that handle. It's one of our more popular items. New last year, we came out with solutions for pad mount transformers. And so that's a new direction for our company. We had a wind farm down in South Texas that wanted the ability to turn on and off their pad mount transformers without having their workers open the doors and exposing themselves to the bus bars that are on the right side of the transformer. So you have to open that right side of the door to get to the switch on the left side. So we designed a solution that will basically you install a door port on the outside of the transformer. There's a hot stick that goes back and interfaces with the switch in the transformer, and then our motorized switching device attaches magnetically to the outside of the transformer and operates the switch inside. Then the technician can stand around the side of the wind tower or 100 feet away and operate it using wireless controls. So we have some companies putting these on their pad mount transformers out on wind farms. We've had some success with this as well in solar applications. So that's an exciting new area to do some work for transformers. Talking about remote racking, you know, if you think about remote racking, that's probably one of the more hazardous tasks, even though it's performed less frequently. Racking involves a lot more moving parts. You have a racking mechanism in the breaker. Sometimes misalignments can occur in the breaker. If they're not well maintained, you'll see that you know, when the finger cluster goes up on the bus bars of the breaker, if they're not lubricated well, if they haven't been maintained, that can require a lot more force for that particular breaker to go on there. We see things that can break when the breakers aren't well maintained and well lubricated. So racking, there's just a lot more moving parts. There are things that can go wrong with that. We've all seen videos online when someone's racking something in and has a catastrophic arc flash. And so we like the idea of getting people away from the breaker while they're doing it. We even have customers that utilize remote racking as a way to save labor, especially outside in the heat. You could use a device to remove the worker from the arc flash, but also save their energy by using remote racking instead of doing it manually on a shutdown. So again, looking at the application specific device that plugs in through a racking window. You can stand back with a corded video screen on the controller that watches the position indicator on the breaker. That's a Magnum DS breaker. You can be back 30, 50 feet, however far you need to be. Or you can have a universal system that works with a wide variety of breakers, which is ideal for a place where you have a lot of different breakers, but they all have rotary racking styles. So you could use this particular RRS1, we call it, for that. We have extractor style as well, which will pull like a motor control center bucket or linear pull out a breaker in a linear fashion or push it back in. So we really try to cover everything. Training is a big deal. We include training with most product sales. We have product specialists out on the road all over the country who will make stops at your site. If you have our equipment and maybe it's been a few years since you've had OEM training on it. I want to make sure we get back in the door. That's a big deal. Sometimes the infrequency of doing racking or something can cause a little bit of discomfort when you open a case up and you're looking at a device thinking, what do I do with it? How do I make sure I get it right? Or how do I put the settings in so I don't over torque the breaker or something? If you have that equipment, we want to make sure you are competent and confident with the equipment. And that's a big push for me to make sure we're re-engaging customers and we are including training and making resources as easy as possible for your electrical safety program. Regarding other training avenues and other places to get familiar with this equipment, we do have an ArcSafe video library available covering just about every type of device that we make and their related solutions for the electrical apparatus. We have a new and updated product finder on our website where you can select by manufacturer and then drill down to the equipment type. You can look at the breaker photo now and see what you've got and make sure it matches up. And then the solution set for that particular breaker will be displayed on the right side of the screen. So we're excited about that. It's a good change. We needed a change like that to make it more user-friendly. If you have questions, please check out our resources. There's my contact information. And I know Randy's going to share that with you here toward the end of the meeting as well. With that, I can open up for any questions that you may have or thoughts.
Randy, you're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Randy.
Sorry, the button on the wire. Okay, I need a remote switch for my microphone. That's what I need. Okay, so let's get to the questions. I already put the PDF in the chat for you to download, everybody. One of the questions was he wanted NA wanted you to show the switches again. So I just say that you've got the NA, you've got the presentation, and you can look through the presentation and review the switches. The first question was, how do you make sure that the racking mechanism will stop the breaker in the correct position?
Okay. So first, there are video options available to make, if you want to stop the breaker, let's say in the test position, you can watch that position indicator and just let go of the control when you get to that point. And that's for our application specific devices. For a couple things on the racking, we have on the universal racking system, there are two protection elements in that. One is we monitor amperage, and we also monitor we have a physical clutch setting on the end of it. So what we do is try to set that so it doesn't over torque the breaker. So if we know a breaker has a shearing pin of 25 foot-pounds, we don't set that clutch any higher than 20 foot-pounds, so it doesn't exceed or exceed the shearing pin. But regarding stopping it in the right position, if you're trying to stop in test, for example, you can use video to monitor where you are in the racking.
Okay, another question. Can you please share catalogs and data sheets of these devices? Yeah, you can go to their website, correct, Justin, and get the catalogs and data sheets?
Absolutely. So our product pages, they're set up. You will have the Arc Flash, the catalog is available on our website. But if you go to a specific product, you can pull up the spec sheet and video demo on that product page. And if it's not there because we have 800 of them in different variations, then we'll have to get that for you directly. Just let us know what breaker you've got.
Okay, and you've got Justin's email address in the chat there. You can write to him afterward and ask him for more information about that. Next question, is there a separate YouTube video on the RSAs for pad mount transformers?
Yes, we do have a demo video available for that. I can share that or send it to you, Randy, if you'd like. Then the only challenge, we need to reshoot it because it's not done on an actual big transformer. It's just done on a demo panel that we created to help visualize it. But yeah, no, it shows exactly what it does.
Hi, Justin.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, just put your question into the chat and I'll relay it to them. Okay, next question. How many different extension pieces does one organization typically purchase?
Well, if we're talking about extension pieces for the universal racking system, I can only say that it varies. I would say probably it could be anywhere 9 to 20 different extensions for the end of the racking tool, just to make sure that the racking tool can mate up correctly with the racking mechanism on different styles of breakers. And so we usually have to do something to fit the different geometries of different breakers.
Okay. Next question. Do you have any videos of an actual arc flash incident occurring while using a remote switching product? This would make a great impression and be a great marketing tool also.
I agree. I do not have that video. And I will say that a lot of customers, a lot of industry doesn't really want to share any videos of any type of incident that they have related to arc flash. So I actually request that of people whenever I can, but it's really hard to pry that away and to let that be used. We do have, I have not here in my office, but I do have a red cover that was blown off of a panel on an offshore oil rig and hit a wall. And we got a big thank you for saving 2 to 3 lives that day. However, I couldn't get any more information or permission to share the story.
Okay, somebody's making a comment rather than a question. I think it's for the arc calculation, the distance for a switchgear bus should be measured to the enclosure or to the worker. As if the door is closed, the arc energy should be decreased. So
That's probably a great question for when Jim comes on.
okay, pass that one.
I don't have my PE hat on today.
And he's next. Next question. Do you have a specification section for your products for consulting engineers?
Not a section per se dedicated just to consulting engineers. That said, I do supply videos and materials to arc flash consulting engineers and people that do arc flash training and FPA 70E training. So if you need any of those kinds of resources or an example of what we do, I can just reach out and we can supply something.
Okay. And that's the last of the questions. So thank you very much. Oh, here's another one. What's a good arc flash calculation method for DC systems such as battery? And
it's outside of my wheelhouse.
That's for Jim. Okay. You're up next. Okay, thanks very much, Justin. Good presentation. Thank you for your questions.